come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
To do the vibes.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Let's start off with a simple but I think important truth. Twitter is stupid. Long live Twitter. I remember when Twitter first came out, I was one of the first people on board, largely because I'd learned my lesson after MySpace, that if you are at all even remotely known as a public figure, people will squat, no fun intended, on your name and take your main name on one of these social media sites. And so if you try to get your own name, if you want to be Matthew McConaughey on anything, there's no chance. It's not going to happen. And so because some other person has already gone, wow, eventually they might want to promote a movie or something, so they'll grab the name, or a super fan will grab it, or what have you. So it's super important to, anytime even the most bizarre and pitiful social media thing starts up, if I hear even tangentially that there is a new social media arm out there in this giant, I think it's even beyond octopus of social media tendrils out there, I have to jump on it immediately and grab it, so that I don't have to buy it back from somebody later on, or if I don't have to, or simply be the real something or other, which happens a lot, or somebody for real, or any of that tack on. And when Twitter came out, it was abundantly clear that the essence of Twitter at its root is simply status updates from Facebook with nothing else. That they looked at the mechanic of how it, what was most people were using Facebook for, what they enjoyed about it, and one of them was the quick kind of no-nonsense status update, not the news feeds and the bigger stuff. That bloomed later. But at that point, people were just kind of checking in with friends. And so Twitter came along and literally was just pop. Here's a super short form of your status update, move along. And interestingly enough, it was mocked incessantly for being the essence of American. I don't know why in particular, because it spread throughout Europe and was actually part of the Jasmine Revolution ultimately in the Middle East, and played actually a huge part in what could get out of there, effectively people texting the entire world. But Twitter caught hell regularly for what was heralded as the essence of modern narcissism for millennials or anybody using social media. The idea was that who cares what kind of sandwich you're having was the ongoing refrain. The standard comedic refrain about Twitter was, I don't care about your latest meal. I don't care about what the sandwich you're eating looks like. And you'll hear that from most disdainful public figures and private citizens. That's the standard hack joke about Twitter, is I don't care about your sandwich, and why should I? And that it is that Twitter itself was the spearhead of the narcissism that is inherent in social media. I am so important, you must hear all about me. All the way down to the minutia of what I'm doing. And there was an attempt in this to create more, ironically enough, more gravitas around the idea of the written word. That to some degree you were it was embarrassing. People were using the internet to just tell each other what kind of sandwich they had, and in the end, they should be doing something better with their time. That if you're going to write something, it should be about something worthwhile. It should be valuable. Otherwise, you're just you're just navel gazing or trying to impress people with unimportant details about your life. And so over time, curiously enough, Twitter sort of rose to have social and political value because of that pressure put on it. Because the initial reaction was, who cares about your sandwich? And the ultimate use of it during the Jasmine Revolution, where images and statements from the Iranian uprising were sneaking out effectively through Twitter as the only social media system that they couldn't figure out how to shut down immediately. Facebook was super easy. MySpace non-existent. All the sort of centrally located Middle Eastern-based social media accounts already came with a kill switch, much like the Chinese ones or the Russian ones. And so Twitter was this, there was a way, especially initially, to set up your Twitter so that you could text to Twitter and have it post something. And this is a way around it, was sort of a miracle for people who were in trouble in certain parts of the world, especially large groups facing government opposition. And suddenly Twitter became incredibly important. And now it vacillates between the two. Now the argument is that Twitter is on the one hand a super important political tool for people to organize with, and who cares about your stupid sandwich? And I would argue that we were better off when it was the stupid sandwich format. Not that the political activism that comes from it isn't valuable and shouldn't continue, because it absolutely should. But when Donald Trump tweets, and this is taken as news, there's an element of eye roll as to what he's using it for, how seriously we should take it, that was originally, I guess, initiated towards Sarah Palin's Facebook page. If people will recall, Sarah Palin started using her Facebook page as her primary PR output device. That statements were released via your Facebook page as a legitimate public relations device. And that was a brave new world at the time. It was seen as absurd that a vice presidential candidate, and then even after the fact, a former vice presidential candidate, would use social media, especially Facebook, as a format for releasing public statements. Yet, there it was. And so there is a natural arc from that to Donald Trump's ridiculous barrage of on the golden throne, middle of the night, random, I'm going to talk directly to my followers and bypass anyone who might scrutinize what I'm saying in my own mind tweets. And I think there might be an increasingly strong case to be made that the immature version of and the embarrassing version of Twitter is the essence of how Donald Trump uses it. That effectively, the way he treats incredibly large-scale problems, incredibly valuable information that should be coming from the administration of the leader of the free world, he treats it like, check out this sandwich I just had. Or like his own personal Yelp review of the entire world. And I think it would behoove us, along with our steady stream of sending him pictures on Twitter of himself that he hates, to start reminding him of that fact when he tweets. Some of the most effective responses to his Twitter overusage and his diarrheic Twitter streams is the fact that many people have finally come and said, you're the president now, go do your job, as opposed to complaining about stuff you technically don't understand. That's the other thing. When we welcome to, by the way, the show. We are streaming at howsparks.tv if you want to join the live chat on YouTube. And you can use the hashtag HSRPM to speak to me on Twitter as well. Today, we're obviously going to take your calls, 773-763-9278. But we're also going to, and we'll go over some of what Trump has done this week, but I think there's a couple of important points, activity-wise that happened, not the least of which is how embarrassing Trump is being, which, quite frankly, I think is valuable at this point because essentially we're just creating a stack of reasons why even Republicans would want to impeach him at some point. And yes, people in the chat, I am taking calls today. Finally, we do have the technology. We can rebuild it. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT820.com.
You know what? It's because earlier this week the phones were down, so that's probably why
they're saying that. I see. Gotcha. Why they're saying that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let's see. Hold on. I have a special prop just for the show today. I'll be right back. I'll have to get him in a minute. They're too far away for me for this one break.
10 seconds.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. So, it should come as no surprise by any stretch of the imagination that Donald Trump went on a tweet storm after he didn't get his way in terms of his ban, which isn't a ban, but they have tons of footage of him calling it a ban, which I think was... we've almost hit a loggerhead. We've hit an irony wall in terms of the whole "I never said that. Wait, here's tape of you saying that." Because I think in reality, this entire "it's not a ban." The media made that up. Sean Spicer reference ultimately was it's exactly what it was. It was exactly. What he called it, and he keeps intentionally calling it that. Okay, so last night, Donald Trump tweets, the opinion of this so-called judge, which essentially takes law enforcement away from our country, is ridiculous and should be overturned, should be overturned, should be overturned. And then he wrote, we must keep evil out of our country. I love that he put evil in quotes. that in and of itself, it speaks volumes. My version of evil, not real evil, obviously, or my friends in Saudi Arabia might have a problem with that because, obviously most of the hijackers in 9/11 were, we must keep evil out of it, meaning poor angry people as opposed to rich angry people, After being forced to apologize for its bad and inaccurate coverage of me after winning the election, the fake news New York Times is still lost. I don't know why he lashed out particularly at the Times. And then he just lost it and wrote, make America great again, in all caps. Make America great again. Just screaming it. He's basically tweeting at the television, is essentially what he's doing. And no one, by the way, should be, surprised that this is now his permanent reaction to things. But this is no way to actually speak to the electorate. It's an absurdity. And while no one is surprised that's how he's actually doing it, he still thinks it's an answer to it. So meanwhile, while he's tweeting and while his what's left of his staff, which is effectively Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner, when they're in the room, calling raids without proper vetting over dinner, never going to the situation room while the actual raid is taking place. And we'll get to that in a few minutes if you haven't heard that lovely piece of news. The State Department has now has officially reversed the visa ban, which was a part of the ban that Trump wrote with Bannon and Kushner under cover of darkness. As of today, the U.S. State Department will allow people with valid visas into the United States, a department official said on Saturday, in order to comply with an opinion from a federal judge in Seattle barring President Donald Trump's executive action. We have reversed the provisional revocation of visas, the State Department official said in a statement. Those individuals with visas that were not physically canceled may now travel if the visa is otherwise valid. If they were physically canceled, like you got here and some TSA dude tore it up, or said it literally took it from you and got rid of it, or someone in your own country who's, got rid of it because they don't want you to leave in the first place. There you go. But that is a direct reversal. Of course, the Seattle, Washington, and San Francisco, the Cupertino area. There's lots of reasons why these folks have need for people to come to this country on visas from places all over the world, and most of that being that they are programming and tech people or tech liaison and programming people for those either industries or the markets they represent. So essentially, while the Trump team is, farting out, crayon scribbled tweets and bills that are the legal equivalent of said tweets, the rest of the government, even the parts that he's put people in charge of, which we would all question, in recognition that we are a country of laws, we're going to have law and order, folks. It's a law and order, glunk, glunk, law and order. I'm going to be the law and order president unless those laws don't apply to me. The law, all of his departments are being as slapdash with law as they possibly could be, and once it hits a certain point where it would be in complete violation, meaning that there's none of this Bush era wiggle room about, I guess, the idea that you deserve, because you're the president, to make certain levels of laws. The Nixonian, well, if the president does it, then it is not illegal, which has been parroted by this administration several times. And so in terms of Trump's use of Twitter and his need to scream at the television like your Thanksgiving uncle, this is I think one of the areas I'm always looking for, an area where we can poke at him in a way that hurts. The interesting thing is the beauty of these demonstrations that we're seeing as far as the marches go. And we'll talk also after the break about the Minneapolis circumstance in Berkeley after the break, because there's a little bit more to unpack there. But the demonstrations themselves, the peaceful demonstrations, all anarchists in black scarves aside, are obviously the thing that's getting under his skin the most, and rightly so, and need to happen weekly on a scale that is staggering. And because that's the only thing he sees. And the other thing he sees is people mocking him on Twitter and on the news. Obviously, he doesn't even watch CNN anymore because the truth bugs him. And I've never been one of those ones that CNN became the butt of the joke for a long time because they create a false parity between ideas that benefited the right more often than not, to a bizarre extent. The sort of classic example is someone wants to build a Holocaust museum, and instead of bringing on someone who doesn't think there needs to be a museum, thinks that there should be something that moves around the world all the time, or some variant other version other than a museum, but still a remembrance. Instead of bringing on someone like that to debate the idea, they'll bring over somebody who doesn't believe the Holocaust ever happened. And that's the debate on CNN. This idea that somehow that all ideas are equal, and that the goal should always be to find the most conflictory concept to almost run-of-the-mill news stories and ideas, business of the country, and bring a nutcase out of the woodwork to argue, some bizarre rebuttal to normalcy. Hence the climate change debate. Again, the climate change argument ultimately never brought on. They would bring on somebody who is concerned about climate change and wants to deal with the science, and they would bring on someone who thinks that God will protect the sky and the Chinese made it up. And instead of bringing on someone, and I don't want to find myself doing CNN any favors necessarily, but for God's sake, if you don't believe in climate change, at least bring on someone who believes that pollution is a problem. That would be the counterbalance argument in that circumstance. That would be we don't think humanity is affecting the overall atmosphere. We think this is just natural tendency towards heat and cold that the planet goes through in arcs. However, rivers and streams and the giant island of rotting plastic in the center of the Pacific Ocean, the hundreds of thousands of children that are sent to the emergency room to the doctor every year because of asthma due to chemicals in the air from car exhaust and chemical plants and stuff, that we can handle. That we can actually... That's useful. That's a useful discussion. I still think you're nuts if you don't recognize we're having an impact on the temperature of the planet. But that shouldn't preclude the idea that I could talk you into thinking that poisoning our streams with coal dust and coal sleuth is a bad idea. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Call in 773-763-9278.
We do have 5 callers.
Oh, excellent.
Steve, Paul, Bernard, Billy, and Mark.
Excellent. Well, we'll go in order. I guess that means Steve. He's been on the phone since last night.
You're like in and out, like that robotic thing again.
Oh, that just happened for your voice coming my way. Now it's fine again. All right. Does it sound okay now? For your voice coming.
Okay. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I just said you were being robotic too, coming this way, and now it's better. You seem fine now. Is it okay?
Okay, but I still hear you like robotic.
Okay, I'll disconnect and reconnect. Here you go. Fingers crossed, it's working, hopefully.
There you go.
Yeah, look at that.
I can hear you.
Yeah. It's funny. It's almost like it gets tangled up after a while. I
don't know if you remember that movie Buck Rogers. That's how you sounded.
Like Twiggy?
The little robot?
Twiggy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who looked like a tiny penis. It was the most awkward robot in the history of the world.
I wouldn't say that, but okay.
look, Google it right now. Google it. I swear to God. It's the weirdest. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I never noticed that. You're right. Oh, my God.
Of course I'm right. That show came on when I was 13. Yeah, everything has that kind of reference.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Isn't that ridiculous?
Isn't that ridiculous? Oh, my God. I never noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Before we take some calls real quick, how's the Drain the Swamp thing going? Yesterday, Donald Trump signs huge Wall Street giveaway. New executive order will transfer billions from retirees to Wall Street. The Obama administration had approved a regulation last year. It established a fiduciary duty for money managers, requiring them to operate retirement accounts in the best interests of their clients. Go figure. The Trump team's repeal will allow financial professionals to steer retirees into expensive or poor-performing products that carry economic benefits and perks for the advisors and their firms. This is the best part. This is the... here we go. At least he says what he believes. At least he's telling you the truth. At least he can be trusted, unlike these other Wall Street insiders. I just can't bring myself to vote for her because she's going to da-da-da-da. Here's the last sentence of this paragraph. Without disclosing conflicts of interest. Yes. They get to allow financial professionals to steer retirees into expensive or poor-performing products that carry economic benefits and perks for the advisors and their firms without disclosing such conflicts of interest. Yeah, he's looking out for you, little guy. That's right. I'm going to take people. You're going to be so happy with the low performing and expensive products that my friends will get a profit from all the time. They'll profit all the time. And this is the American way. Let's take a call. I think we have Steve from the Gold Coast is with us. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yes, we do.
Steve, welcome.
Thank you for taking my call. And I think you raised a really important issue here in that Trump's tweeting is emblematic of the age in which we live. We're a society that is the ones that drive through a public policy. Mm-hmm. It has to fit on a fortune cookie, otherwise we're not interested in listening to it. God forbid that people should go to experts, researchers, scholars. God forbid that you should have to read a book on a given topic to understand what's going on in the Middle East, for instance. No, by all means, let's just go down I call it McDonald Trump, road. I'm a billionaire, so therefore, because I can make a lot of money, that means I'm qualified to do a lot of other things, which is absurd on its face.
Right.
But, this is what people believe. That somehow, because this is a famous guy, we know him from reality TV, he made a lot of money, so therefore he's qualified to do something he has absolutely no experience doing. Which, again, is absurd on its face, but, Donald Trump is proving us to be right. But these people are still hanging on to this cult of Donald Trump. And as you pointed out, they seem to live in this sort of bubble that's totally impervious to reality. No matter what he does, no matter how many things he screws up, no matter how many times he goes back on his word. So, could you imagine President Obama actually signing an executive order in which he wasn't absolutely certain about the language, such that, he was afraid of that executive order being challenged in a court? So don't tell me it's a ban, and then say later on, a few days down the road, well, call it a ban if you like, or if you don't like. Wait a minute, you can't say call it a ban if you like or you don't like. That's part of the language of the law that's going to be challenged. That's the core of the issue here. It's going to go before a court. So which is it, Mr. President? Is it a ban or isn't it a ban? I mean, don't tell me you signed something and haven't got any idea as to what it was that you signed. I mean, this is just absurd that we have come to this point in our society that this is the kind of leadership that we have, and we are standing still. And given you and I don't like the man, but there are still people out there who believe in this idiot, and we've really just got to continue to stand up and say every day, what he's doing that is wrong, what he's doing that is going back on his word. Give him a day or two, and he'll go backwards on any given issue. For people who don't know it, he's pretty much defaulted to the Obama administration what he said he wouldn't do on issues like Israel, on Russia in terms of Crimea and lifting the sanctions. No, he's defaulted to the person he was running against position on these issues. After telling the world he was going to, how wrong President Obama was and how he was going to approach it differently, apparently, well, no, I was going to do something differently, but now I've decided to default back to Obama's position.
Right.
And with regard to these other things, where do you finally draw the line for people who support this man? I mean, how many times does he have to backtrack before you've had enough of this? How many times does he have to be incompetent before you've had enough of this?
The interesting thing is that first of all, their primary response is always, you guys backed Obama, blah, 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 blah. That will be the thing. You're okay with Obama drone strikes or what have you, and that'll be the fallback without any recognition that, we're talking about what's in front of you right now and what's actually happening currently. And it conflicts with your view, therefore you can't allow it to stand. And the idea was, if you hated those things about what he was doing, why are you okay with your guy doing them? And if you are okay with Obama when he does drone strikes in certain countries because you feel he's really killing terrorists and these are really important military actions, then you should have said so at the time. The problem is the duplicitous nature of it and this inability to get past the cognitive dissonance of their idea that, he understands what I'm going through and he's going to make America great again. And meanwhile, all he's doing is rescinding Wall Street rules back to the level that they were during George Bush. And we know how that worked out, that he's having these slapdash, everything that is they accused about Benghazi is short of the artificial stand down order, which was completely phony, happened during the Yemen raid. Everything that they were saying the wanton indifference, the lack of preparation, the lack of care, the removal of people from the chain of command and from the interest circle when discussing this topic. Taking the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and other people out of the discussion, literally making the decision to go through with the Yemen raid over dinner and then never going to the situation room when it was taking place, so you could be aware of the ramifications of the kind of thing that you're actually asking for. That's
absolutely,
yeah.
And these people, as you said, this is cognitive dissonance, and these people have created for themselves an alternative paradigm, one that doesn't include, again, facts, one that doesn't include scholarship or research or anything else. They've said to themselves that, you know what, all those pointy heads over there in universities and people who are scholars and researchers and intellectuals and anybody with a college degree, basically, they're the idiots. You can't rely on them. They're part of some giant left-wing plot, to discredit the average American, because that's what we really need, is the average Joe the plumber kind of guy, because he's going to give us the kind of good common sense, advice and leadership that we need. Common sense being, another term for basically not much in the way of sophisticated thinking, when we're talking about this sort of thing. So they've convinced themselves that you can't, show them the facts and have them change their minds, because they convince themselves that all of that is just nothing but a conspiracy on the part of those of us who are actually in the know, to hide the truth from them. We're just making this stuff up as we go, and it's a giant lie, and it served the interest of President Obama and the Democrats and liberals, but it doesn't serve their interest, so they're just going to call it a lie, and then therefore they can follow in lockstep behind Donald Trump, who also doesn't believe in things like research and scholarship and actually, knowing the topic before you begin.
Well, especially because the irony is that that he basically rose to his position on the idea that the elites are the problem, so we need to put an elite businessman in charge of things. That snooty northeastern people are telling southern people how to live and not respecting states' rights and running everything from New York and the like. And somebody's got to do something for the average person in the in the Rust Belt and all that. And who do they elect? A reality TV star who has basically a market worth based largely on brand, not on holdings. That he literally is a real estate magnate who's worth about less than a third of what he says he's worth financially, is in debt to all of the big complaints about our debt with China being this, like, oh my God, America's in so much trouble because of our debt to China, and then they want to elect a guy who's in debt to China. It's madness. And what's happening now, I think, with a lot of these things, is this just a stack of things. Eventually, even his supporters are going to be overrun by this, and they'll do this whole shrug off. Well, I just think it's important that we do this again. Like they'll fall back to what they wanted in the first place, which will be a single issue vote, and not the one that they know is racist or bigoted. They won't tell you that one. They'll tell you hey, we got to do something about immigration, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and this notion that forget what the research tells you in terms of the total number of people who've been killed in this country by people from those 7 countries.
Right.
If you look at the list, since 1975, we have not had a person that is a actual citizen from any of those countries that are on that list that's killed an American in America. Not one since 1975.
Oh,
so
and especially,
explain to me why we have a ban.
And so again, not to harp too much about the 9/11 hijackers or whatever, but they came from Saudi Arabia. There's no way we're going to have a similar ban on Saudi citizens from Saudi Arabia. Period. We do too much business with them. They have about $1 trillion in our market. They basically hold us for ransom using that. And arguably the San Bernardino killer was radicalized through Pakistan. That's not on the list either. It's an absurdity. What it is effectively so that we create these war zones and then we trap people in them, because it's effectively from some people's perspective, and I don't necessarily know if it's Trump's. I wouldn't presume to know. But certainly from people like Bannon, that it's effectively a passive genocide, effectively. Look the other way long enough, it'll eat itself, and then we can move in and take stuff. Start a war or fuel it, and then scoop up what's left. And if it wasn't for Trump's whole, we should take the oil business, I would say he's completely, outside the loop on that. But I don't think anyone's surprised that the Bannon influence ultimately is that, we should stop people from war zones that we're literally filling with guns and bombs from escaping that space, and at the same time takes, the mention of Jews out of the Holocaust remembrance. That is Bannon's influence. That you can go back and forth about whether or not you believe that there's a soft or hard anti-Semitism in Trump himself. I wouldn't presume to know, and I don't think the fact that his daughter married into another highly influential and rich, real estate empire as a sign that somehow he is therefore accepting, other than rich people to rich people. So and quite frankly, their curious statements back and forth about Israel, as this issue gets murkier and murkier over time, will I think bear this out. But it is not surprising at all that Bannon himself and his influence, that the White House, nixed the mention of Jews from the Holocaust Remembrance Day from a text sent by the State Department, went with their own statement, which did not mention them. And again, I don't want to do, we got to take a break, but I don't want to do these guys any favors. But this whole idea, and this is what brings the lie to what they're saying, the idea that you would make a statement about Holocaust remembrance and say, well, we want to mention everybody. They didn't just kill Jews, which is factually true. They killed gay people. They killed mentally challenged and handicapped people. Basically, they killed lots of foreigners living in their country that didn't have proper paperwork and wouldn't be missed largely. And they killed somewhere in the order of 6 million Jews. So what you do is you make that statement through inclusion, lest we forget that on Holocaust Remembrance Day, that Jews were targeted for extermination by the Nazis, along with every member of the gay community that they were aware of at the time, that they could catch, essentially, that didn't remain hidden or hide themselves, and people with disabilities that were not pure in any sense physically. And therefore, we as the United States should be even more respectful of people's religious differences, gay rights, and the needs of Americans with disabilities. How easy is that? Well, I imagine it's really hard when you don't believe it. We'll be back.
You went out at the end with the robotic.
Oh, no.
And went out. Yeah.
Boo. All right. That was a good little rant, too. That makes me very sad, Let me hang up and call you right back. I'll do the thing again and make sure my internet on this thing is working. I'll call you right back. All the technologies and the things that I'm always working on, it's very difficult trying to fix this, You try to do the best you can, and then they throw this whole thing is just a mess, It's just a problem that people have, and we'll try using this internet to be a little bit better, hopefully. try this. Sometimes I find that when I share internet from my own laptop instead of the one from the room, then it'll work. Okay, I'm connecting again. I don't know why I'm talking like a weird Muppet. It's just how I deal with stress. What a good way to deal with stress.
One minute.
Mm-hmm. Don't play, no, don't.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So the raid on in Yemen, which is the first military act by the Trump administration, which was seen not because of the soldiers themselves, but from a planning standpoint and an execution standpoint on a in terms of the White House, was seen as a failure, and rightly so. It failed the military that it put in harm's way. It failed the civilians unrelated to the target, and it failed our own rule of law and our own sense of moral justice as a country. On all fronts, a failure. So in his first, this is from, you're in trouble when it's everything from Cosmo to The Guardian was able to track this with a level of depth farther than the president himself. So, in Donald Trump's first military operation as president, a raid in Yemen, dozens of civilians, including children, and a U.S. Navy SEAL were killed. U.S. military officials told Reuters that Trump approved the operation without sufficient intelligence, ground support, or adequate backup preparations. Despite all the casualties, do you know who's still at large after the strike? The intended target. Bizarrely, Trump ordered the strike in the early morning hours last Sunday, but he wasn't in the Situation Room when it happened. The president was here in residence. He was kept in touch with his national security staff. White House spokesman Sean Spicer told reporters Secretary Mattis and others kept him updated on both the raid and the death of Chief Owens, as well as the 4 other individuals that were injured, so he was kept apprised of the situation. Further, the morning after the attack, the first thing Trump did was tweet about the New York Times. Somebody with aptitude and conviction should buy the fake news and failing New York Times and either run it correctly or let it fold with dignity. This is unusual for several reasons. According to David Sanger, chief Washington correspondent for the New York Times, the president usually goes to the Situation Room and is presented with what they call a full package for the attack. There's a legal assessment of the legal authorities under which they're doing these, he told PBS. There's a risk assessment to the commandos who would be doing it. There's a risk assessment of what could happen to civilians who are in the area. It looks like President Trump got briefed on it, by and large, at a dinner, not in the Situation Room, not with legal advisors around. I think one of the questions, given how many things have gone wrong, would it have been different if he'd been in the Situation Room and perhaps a different set of briefings? So he wasn't in. This, according to the Independent. And of course, comparisons to the picture of the Bin Laden raid, where Obama and Clinton and their entire staff and military advisors and Gates and Biden are all in watching that raid. Amid claims that Mr. Trump ordered the operation in the early hours of Sunday morning without sufficient intelligence, ground support, or backup, it has emerged that the president was not in the Situation Room at all. By the way, this quote from Sean Spicer should haunt the presidency the entire time he's in here. The president was here in residence. He was kept in touch with his national security staff. Let's break that down. Okay, he was here in residence. Good, he was in the building. That says nothing. That is not, supposed to be impressive in any way. That's exactly where he's supposed to be. He was kept in touch with his national security staff. That doesn't mean he was in touch himself with his national security staff. That doesn't mean he was on the phone with his national security staff, or that he personally was reaching out to his national security. He was kept in touch. There was a go-between between him and the national security staff, not the people carrying out the raid, by the way. He was kept in touch. I mean, there's a level of madness to this that at a certain point you have to start breaking down exactly what they are saying and how little they know or, frankly, care about what's going on here. Now, here's the in Salon article, they were talking about who was killed in it. Let's see. President Donald Trump's first military authorization was a raid conducted in Yemen on Sunday, which killed one U.S. commando and left 3 others injured. No reference to reports that nearly 30 people, including 10 women and children, were killed in total, according to medics at the scene. Among the women and children killed was 8-year-old Nawar, granddaughter of Nasser al-Awlaki. According to The Intercept, she bled to death for 2 hours after being shot in the neck. It was hardly the first encounter between the U.S. and the al-Awlaki family. She's the daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki, the U.S. citizen killed in a drone strike in Yemen in 2011. He had close ties to al-Qaeda, but was never charged or convicted of a crime. 2 weeks later, in October 2011, his 16-year-old son was killed in a drone strike as well. The person they were attempting to kill is still alive. This was the first time the U.S. had put troops on the ground in Yemen since December 2014. However, Yemen was subjected to dozens of drone strikes under the Obama administration. The U.S. has supported Saudi Arabia with billions of dollars in military aid. Saudi Arabia, along with 8 other Arab nations, have been bombing the Houthi rebels in Yemen since the civil war broke out in March 2015, but have disproportionately killed civilians. While there is currently a large al-Qaeda presence in Yemen, it wasn't always that way. Bombs continue to slaughter innocents that has played directly into the hands of terrorist recruitment and has contributed to the rise of Al-Qaeda in the Arab Peninsula, ACAP. Experts said is the most dangerous branch of the terrorist organization. And that's Salon referencing the State Department on this. Alleged target of drone strike that killed American teenager is still alive, according to State Department. That's the reference to the drone strike. Commando dies in U.S. raid in Yemen. First military op okayed by Trump. We have to take a break in a second. But the overall, by the way, let's be abundantly clear. This was not a drone strike. This was boots on the ground. This is soldiers in the air. So this idea that somehow there's a difference in collateral damage, who gets killed, all this between drones and human beings, it only ups the ante of what the force coming in this case, us, but other countries have drones as well and use them, just not as often as we do, I suppose, or we don't hear about them as much, that those people going in, the country sending in troops has more to lose, and therefore the idea is that they may be a little more careful with sending in troops than they do with drone strikes, and therefore less civilian casualties when it's troops versus the use of drones. Not when it's handled like this. War's the problem. Everything else is a symptom, a methodology. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay. The operation began at dawn when a drone bombed the home of Abdulrauf al-Dahab, and then helicopters flew up and unloaded paratroopers at his house and killed everyone inside, said one resident who spoke on condition of anonymity. Next, the gunman opened fire at the U.S. soldiers who left the area, and the helicopters bombed the gunman and a number of homes that led to large numbers of casualties. A Yemeni security officer and a local official corroborated that account. Fahd, a local resident who asked that only his first name be used, said several bodies remained under debris and the houses and the local mosque were damaged in the attack. In a message on its official Telegram messaging account, Al-Qaeda mourned Dahab as a holy warrior and other slain militants without specifying how many of its fighters were killed. American fighters have not conducted any special ops in Yemen since December 2014, months before nearly 2 years of civil war rendered the country even more dangerous and offered Al-Qaeda leeway to expand into more lawless areas. The United States conducted dozens of drone strikes in Yemen throughout Barack Obama's presidency to combat Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, regarded as one of the global militant group's most dangerous branches. The local Al-Qaeda unit organized the Charlie Hebdo magazine attack in Paris in 2015 and has repeatedly tried to down U.S. airliners. Yeah. So. Oh, you guys talking about the Kellyanne Conway thing? Can I in defense of a little bit of Chris Matthews and some of the others, is they're counting on most of the editorial boards, I think, except for Fox and the Wall Street Journal, are counting on this thing imploding at some point. That at some point the legal aspect of things is, well, and insofar as him being a liberal too, Matthews being a liberal, I agree. But he also, you could see him get a little fired up in his Pennsylvania way when he talks about the stupid wars and the American jobs going overseas that Trump should have pushed more often and all that. When Trump gets off message, Matthews tends to get angry at him for going that way. And I think it's because, and you can see why those issues worked well with certain voters throughout, the Iron Belt and the Rust Belt. And throughout, the dead manufacturing sector of the Midwest. So, but ultimately, I think there's a lot of effectively rope-a-dope going on news-wise from certain news organizations because of how the Trump administration is just shutting people out. So some of them are actually trying to attempt to look like they're playing nice, to bait them in to have the tape later, to when it all goes down, like it's a big trap. I don't trust that everybody is on board with that idea, but there are certainly those in the news that, and not because they hate Trump specifically or they have a bone to pick with him, but because they literally think this is going to fall apart and they want as much, they want to have the inside scoop tape of them digging the hole. He came on this program just a couple of years ago and said blah, blah, blah. Or she was on here last month and she said this. That kind of stuff. Well, that's what Tiffany Matthews sometimes has multiple personalities, which it's because he's playing hardball. His entire, you have to understand his system, his methodology, his show is based on the idea that he takes everybody to task. He calls out everybody. And so at a certain point, you got that's what the ongoing this idea that we need to actually hold everybody, their feet to the fire. That phrase, which I hate.
15 seconds.
Okay.
radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn fuss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. You can always watch the YouTube live stream at halsparks.tv if you want to join in the chat there as well. And, of course, I'm on Twitter at halsparks if you want to follow me there. I find it a good place to both spread political views and tell you what kind of sandwich I had. Or I guess in my case, vegan ramen, I think is the last thing I posted food-wise. That being said, and we're going to take some calls again in a second. The statement following, we were discussing before in the Situation Room when it took place, that he was in touch with staff through another intermediary, according to statements by his spokesperson, meaning that he wasn't even talking to the people themselves that were in charge of the raid or in direct contact with them, or even all those pictures of Hillary Clinton texting or on the phone talking to staff at state. He was talking through another, it's one could read literally that he was talking to Ivanka, who was talking to them. For all we know, that's how it worked out. That makes as much sense as a description of the actual events as anything else. His statement, though, was, Americans are saddened this morning with news that a life of a heroic service member has been taken in our fight against the evil of radical Islamic terrorism. Okay, first of all, the distancing of Americans are saddened this morning with the news that a life of a heroic none of the I come to you with a heavy heart is in our fight for freedom and our values, an American soldier has lost his life. Just the lack of inclusion, like he's not an American, is very weird. I don't want to read too much into it. I'm sure I'll get backlash because of that. But can I explain something before we take another call? Radical Islamic terrorism. Okay, the use of that phrase, the idea somehow, the president and his ilk are always clamoring for us to use the phrase radical Islamic terrorism. It's super important that we use the phrase radical Islamic terrorism. We must use this phrase. The president, President Obama was afraid to use it, and we're not going to be afraid to use it. We're going to be the powerful people. We're going to show strength in radical Islamic terrorism. Okay, first of all, why is that such a big deal? Obviously, to those folks, anyways. Obviously, when you say something like radical Islamic terrorism, you specify an element that there aren't other geopolitical groups within those countries besides the Islamic forces that help in terrorism sometimes. But here's the reason they use it. The reason they want to say radical Islamic terrorism is because there are elements of that kind of terrorism or those kind of radicalization in almost every Middle Eastern country. They are not the prevailing thoughts. They are not the that are in control of the government. They are not in a lot of these situations in control of parliamentary positions, and a lot of them are not even in a position of being in charge of policing villages even. But what it does give you when you say radical Islamic terrorism is any Islamic identifying country in the future. That's why. That is the reason why the neocons specifically need to use that phrase. It gives them context for attack. Allows you to say after 9/11 to go attack Iraq. And that if anybody from any of these countries, because of they are related directly or tangentially to anyone killed in a drone strike or in a raid, has a political bone to pick with this country for our intervention in their country, rightly or wrongly, by the way, immaterial to this discussion. If they are one of if If Anwar al-Awlaki was completely deserving of what he got, and yet somebody one house over had nothing, and in a better circumstance would have taken up arms against him had they known or had backup to do so. That's all our, we must fund the rebels idea. That those people eventually, after seeing enough of their own family members and enough of their own villagers dead, decide that the target is the United States. That individual, their own Dylan Roof, their own Timothy McVeigh circumstance, but against a foreign power. The fact that they would attack because of geopolitical blowback, not because of their religion, would give us context in our argument with the UN, other forces, or simply known because we are fighting radical Islamic terrorism, and this is a country that has a prevalence of Muslims in it. That's it. That phrase is strictly for the use of pretext for war with a country that hasn't attacked us. And never mind the fact that it gives you all, whenever you use phrases like that, whenever you play up the strength of ISIS as they're growing and they're in 32 different countries and stuff, as if they own those 32 different countries, as if they are the controlling force in those countries, as if the people in those countries aren't fighting them themselves, as if the ISIS isn't slaughtering other Muslims in those countries. That the essence of the problem is Muslim in general, is Islam in general. And it would give us a pretext because of that spread to go into any of those 32 countries and for full-scale, boots-on-the-ground fighting or strikes like the one that happened in Yemen. Even without the use of that phrase, we conducted many drone strikes that were directed at people that we, through tacit UN approval and other actions, viewed as enemies of the state. And some of them rightly so. Some of them intending to kill people for no other reason than they are not like them. Specifically murdering and, blowing up planes, blowing up, shooting up malls, what have you. All that kind of stuff. Yes, those people are dangerous and need to be dealt with. Is that the best way of doing it? That's where the debate lies. But the ultimate idea that using the phrase radical Islamic terrorism is essentially just a geopolitical pretext to being able to attack any country you want that is predominantly Muslim or has a section of it that is Muslim that you may want so we can take the oil. Now that the cat is out of the bag and Donald Trump is effectively saying that's what we should have done in the first place. That's what we should be doing. As a thank you for killing Saddam Hussein, you should pay us protection money for us coming in and destabilizing your government based on a false pretext. That's you should give us. That's a stunning thought. And believes at its core. They believe that radical Islamic terrorism means that it can take root in any Islamic country, is pretext enough to protect ourselves, to go in it, or a voluminous amount of Muslims in it, carry out whatever military actions we see fit or think are necessary. And then after the fact, you use that idea that we can actually, that effectively the authorized use of military force applies to the war on terror. Attacking radical Islamic terrorism is tangentially legally attached to that. Therefore, any country that we say contains radical Islamic terrorism we've already declared war on it. We can go in. That's why. Put aside your real feelings about freedom and safety and belief in America's right to defend itself and whether or not terrorists are going to get us. put that aside for a second and recognize these folks have a bigger plan. We'll be back.
The lines are full.
Excellent. Okay, we'll take them after this. Yeah, they Trump loosening the rules on financial markets, curiously enough, benefits his Saudi partners. And understand that I am no fan of orthodox religious law. I think monotheistic religions are fundamentally incompatible with democracy because of the necessity of how they organize a power structure, and that ultimately the founding fathers, in putting forward the First Amendment, was literally an affront to the Ten Commandments, the first two. Thou shalt have no other God before me, and thou shalt make no graven images. Technically speaking, that's freedom of religion and freedom of speech right there. A graven image is, writing the name of God or carving the likeness of anybody.
15 seconds.
Okay. However, one of the reasons they have a problem with it is because Sharia and Hebronic, I guess, Jewish Orthodoxy means that usury is a crime.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. Let's take some calls. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Paul from Seattle.
Cool. Hey, Paul, go ahead.
How you doing, Hal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what's most weeks that we've full 2 weeks now that Trump has been in office, he's in midterm controversy form in 14 days.
Mm-hmm. And he's on vacation.
Is it? He's on vacation. Yeah. For how long?
He's taken the weekend off. He's in Mar-a-Lago, and he's down there for that Republican fundraiser thing that's next door at a facility nearby. They're all having a secondary party there. And then he's having a big private, no list of who's attending Super Bowl party on Sunday.
Oh, still campaigning.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for him because he seems completely unable to govern. So campaigning is that's his fort. So I guess that's where he should go. But overnight, and this kind of ties in with your social media analysis, I guess. I don't do social media. It's just for a number of reasons. But it seems as though overnight, and I mean really since the entrance of Donald Trump into the campaign, the idea that there are no facts is just really caught on. There are no. I mean, right. I was laughing at some of the, I guess, their hashtags or whatever that Tom Hartman was reading yesterday. That Frederick Douglass's silence on the Bowling Green massacre is stunning and very telling. This is, or that people are talking about it as if it never happened. The idea that Kellyanne Conway would bring this up, this Bowling Green massacre, at the same time we have people who still say that the Newtown massacre was a false flag, never happened, and the reason they know that is that Alex Jones has an attendance sheet that shows that all those children were marked absent that day.
Right.
I mean, this is the kind of
They think all of them are fake. That's I have to say. Thanks for bringing that part of it up, because that's one of the things that sticks in my craw. Literally, according to gun rights activists and the Alex Joneses of the world, there has not been a real shooting in this country since Columbine, and even that was fake. That was they literally every mass shooting in this country is orchestrated by the Pentablet. Like the absurdity and the disgusting nature of this is off the charts. But it's literally every single one. Every time somebody gets shot, there is now video online, and it's a false flag. It's they're like, this has got to be fake. There's no way. These people are not crying as hard as I think they should be. They're saying they forgive the attacker or something like that. That's so fake. It's madness, but it's and I would understand if they believed it about one of them, if they picked it apart like 9/11 and they just focused on like that was fake. They were trying to manipulate them, but they literally believe all of them are fake. Continue.
Well, yeah, my younger brother was one who was saying that the Newtown thing was fake, and I guess he was getting it from Alex Jones. And I said to him, you know how you can prove that it was real? You know how you can absolutely prove to yourself that it was real? I said, go to Newtown, Connecticut, and sit in a tavern and order a beer and start telling people that it was all fake.
Right.
And if you walk out of there with your head on your shoulders still, you'll know, get the absolute crap beat out of you if you go to Newtown and sit in a bar and start talking like that.
Yeah.
That's the way you can prove it to yourself.
Well, these guys, and some of them do, though. Some of them go and accost the parents. They accost people who've lost families in shootings and the like, because they think it's some sort of like worldwide gun grab that's going on. Yeah.
But the idea that this, you see, when you try to reduce, let me start this way. It's the conservatives who said, the liberals are the ones who just can't accept that there's an absolute truth. It's always the liberals who are the ones who are, what's the word? They can't accept that there's an absolute truth. Well, I submit that in order is the truth, that's the truth of God. But, truth starts with absolute facts. And as long as they're going to reduce the entire nation to the two things that everybody has, which is an opinion and an erectile orifice, then we can know nothing. There can be no absolute anything except chaos.
Well, yeah,
and that is their strategy, to create chaos such that nothing, and so therefore the people that still support this guy, who are arguing for these, I mean, it's ridiculous. I almost don't even know where to start. I feel tongue-tied in a way because I cannot wrap any rationality around this running. It's a train wreck. It's a train wreck.
And there isn't a real way to gather all this in one fell swoop. At some point, I feel like I'm going to have to whip out a Glenn Beck chalkboard to keep track of all the nonsense. And the mix of, and I appreciate the call. I'm going to grab another call before the break, but the mix of genuine Trump gibberish, stuff that means nothing to say. It's not based on a real policy. It's not based on anything. It's just what he thinks will get him attention, what people will, look at him and say, oh, I'm glad he said that, or even go, I wish he wouldn't say stuff like that, but but he says what he means, and that's why I like him, and that's that. Like those kind of statements, which have nothing to do with governing the country at all, even in terms of what his followers would want, even in terms of what the people who voted for him would like. And then the mix of the ilk around him, Flynn especially, those two, what their goals are. Not even mentioning the Paul Ryans of the world, what they would want to accomplish and hope to get through there. But those two folks, in particular, are basically drafting him in a ping pong ball to get him to do what they want to do, in the context of he doesn't really care what he's doing half the time anyways, so maybe, a good 40% of the time he'll do exactly what we say. Let's take another caller. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Bernard.
Cool. Hey, Bernard, welcome.
Wow. Good. Look, first I just wanted to say, man, thank you for taking the call. Thanks for everything that you do. It's kind of crazy here in the Chicagoland area that we only get a chance to check you out
once a week
on CPT on Saturday. I really wish you could come on during the week and guest on Stephanie's or Tom's show, but the way you've broken down a few topics today, one being Yemen, one being the radical Islamic terrorism piece, and how you brought the sort of the meat of those issues really to the surface and help people to understand at a different level, at a granular level, what these sort of issues really mean and what they really represent. So I really appreciate that. The one thing I will suggest to you, we have listeners. CPO has listeners.
Yep.
The Women's March. I mean, you know, there's been a great deal of support. People are paying attention. And so with this whole issue around Trump and his tweeting, Stephanie's kind of got this whole not my president thing going. But the way that you kind of broke down the immaturity thing today that has been demonstrated by Trump in his tweeting, I think hashtag immature by any and everybody that tweets Donald Trump.
Yep.
Hashtag immature.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already thin-skinned. He's already at the brink of who knows what he's going to do at any given moment. Hashtag immature would needle him to no end, and I can see his hair, his golden hair on fire each and every day he read those tweets and actually saw at the very end conclusion, hashtag immature.
I agree. I think that should
another campaign.
Yes, I think hashtag manboy, hashtag toddler. I've often called him toddler in what I'm doing because of his just kind of me attitude. At least a child has a reason because they can't get up and get their own stuff. But a grown man who behaves like that is stunning. I think you're right. I think immature is a great way to just bounce back what he's saying because it's technically not not name calling. It is referential to the behavior on a linguistically higher level than he operates on. I think that's what makes that a good idea. Is that by saying hashtag immature as opposed to hashtag manboy, he might write off the latter, but the former will give him will give those around him pause, and I think that's also important. Really appreciate the call. It's such a great point, and I will try to make an appearance on more and more during the week stuff or whatever. Maybe we'll start doing hump days on Wayne's show, and I'll visit or something like that. Because obviously there's plenty to talk about. And I always feel jammed up, and I only have 2 hours, and I want to get calls in, but I have literally over the course of the week I end up seething about on the show. And hence the rants. Anyways, we have to take a break, actually, so appreciate the call. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and we'll be back right after this with more of your calls. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. I'm trying to read some of the tweets related to the stream today, and some of them are in Spanish. So, and my speaking of Spanish is horrible, but my reading of is not too bad. Once you kind of understand the essence of Latin languages, it's amazing how you can thumper your way through. Even through the Germanic sometimes. Like, I find myself reading, I'm like, okay, there's definitely a word there I don't get, but the rest of this I can kind of put together.
Twenty seconds.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
If you go to halsparks.tv, you can watch the live stream there of the show, live from in our chat room there, which is always a good time had by all. And then, of course, at Hal Sparks on Twitter. You can tweet me there using the hashtag HSRPM if you want to join in the conversation. It's one of the easiest ways to do it. That being said, I have pinned at the top of my my profile a tweet that I many times over I will often take a tweet that is particularly germane to what's going on, and I'll pop it to the top of there and let people in. Right now is to all the, quote, I just can't bring myself to vote for her people. Your outrage at Trump is hollow. And I believe that. If you didn't vote for Hillary in whatever state you were in, and you didn't contribute to that large popular vote margin, and yet you still want to whine about what happened, I can't take your argument that seriously. Sorry. Better luck next time. And if you want to be angry at him, then you should have taken it more seriously, as we all did around here, and voted either in contrast to him, or if you liked him, for him. But that's it. Anyways, in terms of that, and I just retweeted something from Rob Ryan. The Republicans couldn't wait to stop, to let mentally ill people get guns again. And Gary on Twitter said he signed it so that he could get a gun himself, meaning Trump. There you go. Let's take another call. 773-763-9278.
We have Billy.
Cool. Hey, Billy. Welcome.
Hey, Hal. How you doing?
I'm good. Good. Welcome. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, man. I'm just getting back in from the Bowling Green Memorial Massacre.
Yeah, never forget to remember, never to remember. Never remember.
Oh, man,
hashtag never
great statues out there. All the people praying around the monuments, man, it was just awe-inspiring.
You know how many people are probably making a video, by the way, you know how many people are probably making a video that made videos that are now making Bowling Green Massacre was real videos? But go ahead. Yeah.
And how much money they're pulling in, too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Twitter links galore. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to talk about the so-called Muslim ban.
Right.
How we go from them talking about Muslim ban all through the campaign, then we get the Trump whisperer, Rudy Giuliani, coming up and said, Trump just jumped up in front of me and asked me to get together a Muslim ban. It wasn't a Muslim ban. And we're supposed to believe that everything they're doing is not against a specific race.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, a lot of this is, to some degree, it isn't a quote-unquote Muslim ban because technically there's a couple of countries that are predominantly Muslim, for example, Saudi Arabia, that aren't included. It's a racist ban based on national origin of a large group of people. That's, the Muslim part of it, interestingly enough, didn't really come to the forefront until they specifically made the action of, we're going to let some Christians in from those areas. And then it officially became a Muslim ban as well as a racist ban towards people of Middle Eastern origin in the poorer countries we have boxed into a war zone, especially in Syria. I mean, how many Syrian refugees, first of all, lovers of the show Alice, for example, Vic Tayback, away from the modern MGTOW men's rights crowd, they love Mel from Mel's Diner, saying "stow it, Blondie," and running his place and saying women are dumb and all that kind of stuff. Vic Tayback, the actor who played that, Syrian American. There you go. And many. Don't get me started on the Zoroastrian background of our dear friend Freddie Mercury, which they would know the difference anyways. I think you're right,
and
though.
They're counting on two things.
Go ahead.
They're counting on two things. They're counting on their 20% solid believers who don't, and the other 20 to 30% of quote good Republicans who just sit there on their hands and stay quiet, even though they know.
Well, they're going to benefit from it, and then they can tacitly act like they're arm's length from it, but they're never going to do anything to stop it, which means it was their plan in the first place. This guy, Trump is effectively their bulldozer that they just kind of put the gas pedal, and then they're like, I don't know what happened to your house. That's effectively what they're hoping for. I didn't drive the thing into your house. He did, and we'll just it was an eyesore anyways. Is effectively what they're doing. They're using him as cover, and they can't be allowed to. They can't be allowed to believe otherwise. They should not be allowed to get off the hook from the fact that that's exactly what they're doing.
Same thing with our health care. Same thing with our finances.
Right.
They're just staying behind it. All right, thanks, Hal.
Yeah, appreciate the call. Absolutely. I mean, if you're Vladimir Putin, wouldn't you want the president of the United States to create random idiotic distractions on Twitter while poisoning the water, undermining our economy, and gutting regulations as far as our physical safety? Isn't that what you'd want if you were Vladimir Putin? I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but I'm saying, isn't that what you would want if you were him? Let's take another call. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Mark from Cleveland.
Cool. Hey, Mark, welcome.
Hey, Hal. I got to admit the other callers have stolen my thunder because I was going to bring up the Bowling Green massacre and how I'm glad you're not part of the conspiracy to cover it up. But
right.
I have
no.
another topic for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I have read these articles about Steve Bannon. Supposedly years ago writing memos about where he thinks the next wars are going to be, like America is going to have to go to war with China or something like that. Have you heard any of that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, he was it's hard to tell what to take seriously because he was actually a kind of low-rent movie producer back then. So he might have just been writing, these might have been script notes on napkins. I don't know how seriously to take them. But I do know that there's a genuine amount of salivating about Partnership for a New American Century, the idea that Wesley Clark, during the run-up to the Iraq War, went in and looked at the Pentagon, had this plan laid out that if we ever got the chance, this is how we would knock down 7 Muslim countries. Interesting that number keeps coming up. And which ones would be first, and that they were going by playbook, which was Afghanistan, then Iraq, eventually backing Israel in attacks on Egypt and Iran, and kind of spreading American influence and taking the oil, effectively until it was gutted, and then the Middle East would kind of go back, rescind back into rugs and dates, was the idea, that they would gut the economies so that they would have to, survive much like they had in previous centuries, both, timing is that you want to look at it. But there's no surprise that there's no strange bedfellows in this. These people agree. And there's a huge element of neocons on the right who believe that, the Sarah Palin wing, which is we got to protect Israel so that when Jesus comes back, all the Jews can have their throat slit on Armageddon and usher in the Lord. So we're friends of Israel just because that's what prophecy says until it's their day. And then there's the group that believes that strategically they're a nuclear power that can help us control parts of the Middle East that are resource rich. And there's those two particular groups, the Armageddon crowd and the oil and money crowd that does, which is why we play footsie with certain rulers that are, that would disgust any of us if we saw what they do in person. That some of which, by the way, come to our own country to participate in some rather there's a part of Bannon that goes, yeah, whatever wipes him out. I mean, that's effectively Bannon is effectively taken what I would call Western nationalism, which is I think worthy of being discussed, meaning that the Western system of government, obviously, I believe it to be superior, or I wouldn't be living in a Western country. And certainly the religious plurality, freedom of speech, all the women's rights, gay rights, all the things that we benefit from in the West are something to be proud of in Western nationalism, in Western countries, and the Western ideals that have come up. And those ideas came through both the Enlightenment, the mingling with the Iroquois Nation Treaty, how Native American tribes got along, the French Britannia, and the warring factions in there that were trying to create a balance of government between two warring types of monarchy. All those ideas spreading out of, the relationships of tribes and groups of people going, okay, how do we work this out? The European adventures into China, the Mongolians coming down from the north, ideas of, okay, where did the traders get together? Where were they able to have peace between two totally different ideologies, cultures, and all that? What were these zones like? Could a government be like that? So there was a grouping of people from all different races, all different religions that managed to go, that we could craft, and then it didn't matter where you go or where you're from, you could come here, and this is kind of a safe space to not act out on your most extreme beliefs, but you can be yourself within certain context, and we'll set that context in a constitution. That kind of Western nationalism, that idea of that Western policy, Bannon and those guys want to turn that into white nationalism. They want, that all the good things that we benefit from Western society that we appreciate, that have grown throughout the democratic world, they want to basically make that a whites-only group. And that when it does occur in other countries, it is administered by whites. That's the difference. I appreciate and respect a certain level of Western nationalism. I'm an American. I love this. I think the rules and I think the Constitution and the establishment of it, the defense of it, is important and valuable to humankind. But this idea that we only have a certain level of diversity because we can only handle a certain amount of diversity because of that's the difference. What they've done, though, is hijacked patriotism and Western pride and wrapped it in race. And I think it is the responsibility of progressives, of liberals, to go, no. We are honoring the promise of the founders, the promise of America. We don't think you have to make America great again because we think it was always great, even with its flaws, even with its mistakes, even with its damage. The process, its worth. Hey, that's why I'm not for flag burning. I don't agree with it because it's emblematic of what we stand for. You don't burn the flag to show that America's done wrong. You say that person is burning the flag every time they do something like that. Like if every time you slapdash throw a raid in Yemen together, you deregulate international bankers so that they can pretty much gut our economic system. That's Trump burning the flag, if you know what I mean. We'll be back. That's my own personal, and so it's the only one that counts for me. We'll be back. The Green Tea Party. I love the Green Tea Party. Mm-hmm. Hashtag Green Tea Party. Jude, that's nice. We're more regular, so we're not full of shit. That's great. Hashtag Green Party, the Oolong Tea Party, right? That'll be a little too Taiwanese. That'll then you get into the South China Sea stuff, Julie. Thanks, Stephanie. But I think, Carl, I think, yeah, and you know what? That's going to be my statement when we come back. Part of this, I do need an extra hour. I'm totally not gonna. I'm gonna end with my America has always been great, and it's even great now, and it will still be great even after this nonsense. As a
We have less than a minute, and we still got 5 callers.
Yeah, I doubt
so
we won't get through all of them, obviously, but we'll get through.
But we can take Diane and Nancy. They've been holding for a minute.
Great, yeah, we'll take them first right when we come back.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Welcome back. We're going to take a couple more calls, and then I'm going to end. The happy ending today is going to be me explaining why I think America is great, has been great, and will be great. Like it or not, we'll be. Well, that's going to be my. We'll be signing off with that today. Who do we have first, Lady B?
Diane.
Hey, Diane, go ahead.
Hello, hi. I wanted to comment on Trump's obsession with Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama is everything Trump would like to be, but is not.
You mean smart, a good father, connected to the issues, aware, well-read, balanced, emotionally.
Right.
Yeah.
He got into Harvard.
Yeah.
Trump was rejected by Harvard, and I'm sure they're happy about that today.
Right.
That they did that. He has a beautiful wife who loves him and doesn't need plastic surgery to enhance her beauty. And I'm sure Trump knows the women that he's been with, if he was just average schmo Joe, they would not be with him. They wouldn't want him. I mean,
that's got to haunt him
he's a
all the
horrible
time.
person.
Or I think maybe he just pats himself on the back, like, look how successful I am. They just have to like me because I do that. I think he's so narcissistic. That's actually how he thinks. I don't think he'll ever have a moment where he's like, she only loves me for my money. Like, honestly. Yeah.
Right. I agree with you about that. And they're all surgically enhanced. Ivanka, I'm from New York.
Uh-huh.
That is not Ivanka's original face. When she was about 13, she was doing modeling. She was in the paper.
Right.
She was an exact replica of Trump.
Right.
She looks just like him. And this is her new surgically enhanced face. And if you look at Melania, Ivanka, and the original wife, they all have the same face, which is interesting.
It is. This uniformity of look. I mean, I think all face lifts all seem to look the same. I don't know how you get around that. I've never seen anybody get a nose job to make it bigger, and I think I would be for it. I've actually, I remember Cher back in the day when I was a kid, and like Cher's nose was big compared to what was considered like almost the Diana Ross ever shrinking nose that was kind of going on in pop culture. And I was like, this woman is gorgeous. This woman is incredibly beautiful. But her nose doesn't fit this kind of minuscule, I can barely breathe through the thing, that's how you know I'm attractive thing. And I've never understood that. I've never understood smaller nose equates to better looking. That's that's my own personal preference. That being said, I think it is curious that they all physically look the same. Trump has a type even when he insists on... did he come into the room while Ivanka was having her nose done and went, like, a little smaller? Wait, let my wife stand right next to her. Give me one of those. Give me another number 3. We love number 3s in this family. Appreciate it.
Can I just comment on the raid, though? I think that was because one of Barack Obama's greatest accomplishments was killing bin Laden when he had just been forgotten, and it was just popped right off, and it went well. And Trump just figured, well, I can do better. I'll kill whoever he was trying to kill or whatever he was trying to do. And it went horribly wrong, and that is a Trumpian kind of thing. Horribly wrong for Trump if you look at the trajectory of his life.
I agree. Yeah.
And I have a question about that planning. It was planned over dinner. Were the wait staff in the room while they were planning this invasion?
We're assuming he had a genuine dinner like an adult human being. When they say dinner, I just picture him and Bannon and Flynn with like burgers sitting in front of Fox News, just, farting up the furniture. I don't know that, like, there's this idea that because he has curly-Q French furniture that somehow he lives a regal life, when in reality he has a terrible diet, horrible sleep schedules, and probably shuffles around in his boxers half the time. Were people out of the room? I think he speaks to everybody through intermediaries, even the people who are supposed to be classified only to hear certain stuff. So I have no idea, and I think that's an important question. By the way, the White House staff, the people who work there, who work through all different presidencies, our ability to look past the Lyndon Johnsons who whip their genitalia out at reporters, and the Trumps of the world, and the decent fathers and husbands that are Obama and Jimmy Carter. They can deal with both, and I think they deserve credit for that. I think we could all learn a lesson in humanity from them. So, but it's a mystery. There's no way of knowing because they're not putting those lists. There's not even a list of who's going to be at his party this weekend, this Super Bowl party. So it's a good question. Let's grab one more caller. Who do we have, Lady B? Because we're running out of time.
We have Nancy.
Cool. Hi, Nancy. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Hal, how are you doing? I want to say I agree with everybody. I often wondered, and I've called WCPT about this, why you only have 2 hours and everybody else gets 3. Because believe me, I could tell you a lot of people that should be having the 2, and you have the 3. But anyway.
That's sweet of you to say.
I need to listen to you I'm sorry. I need to listen to you every week to knock me down, because after a week's worth of all the baloney, I go crazy.
Understood.
But I'm of the firm belief that he's doing exactly what they want him to do. He's the puppet, and he wanted a vice president. Right now he's got Steve Bannon, and that's my belief, that him being president And I think the more we say that, the more that will aggravate him, although he's of a mind that, none of this gets through to him anyway. But that's my belief, that he, Steve Bannon's calling the shots, and they're probably eventually going to get Pence in there, which is going to be a bigger disaster.
I think they're going to use him as a bull in the china shop to give Pence the look of being genteel and caring, to basically like, well, hell, this guy's Reagan compared to Trump. So if Trump gets impeached, as soon as he outlives his usefulness, the stampede will begin. They'll impeach him. He'll have to step down, and Pence will be the guy. And Pence will have the timing of it will. There's a bunch of these people already talking about this in Washington. How if we time this right, Pence will be in a perfect position to to run as an incumbent in the last year of this term. And against whoever the Democrat is, and be seen as this kind of like, well, that was crazy before, but he's a good Christian man. The evangelicals will really like them. He'll carry forth the Trump policies, but with a little more, an iron hand and a velvet glove, and be nicer about it. Like that. That's really it. We're near the end of the show. I appreciate the call. You're awesome. Be well. Well, so I want to close on this, guys. There's a lot of back and forth about whether Trump would make America great again, or there's MTV's even had videos where they say America's been great. The experiment that this country, with all of its flaws, is great for the very fact that people can be who they want to be. That we have the ability to have free speech. That we have the ability to have freedom of religion. These were all new things set forth when this country was created. It's what makes it extraordinary. It's what makes it great, and that's not even counting us going to the moon. Discoveries and the ability for people to start owning their own property and all kinds of things. The Irish being treated as humans outside of Ireland for the first time in many ways. There's 100 ways this America is great and will continue to be, because it's the principles of the country that make it great. It's up to us to keep them. I'm Hal Sparks. We'll see you next time. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to all the callers. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Lady B. Typing in the wrong thing. So, one of the recurring things that I see, in this whole, America isn't great. We'll just call this. And by the way, thanks everybody in the chat room for sticking with me for a couple more minutes. If you got to go, I totally understand. Yes, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/HalSparks. We have you can donate on the page. It certainly helps buy things like microphones and all that kind of stuff, and road gear when I'm traveling around and all that. I want to make abundantly clear about something, because you hear this a lot, and it's largely from both people who view themselves as hardcore liberal or progressive, some people, I guess, who view themselves as anarchists, and certainly a certain number of Trump supporters and right-wingers who believe that America is only great in fits and starts, and on in the far fringy left, the idea that America was never great. And that it won't be until we get it together to where everything is perfect. And to me, I have my own personal feeling on this is that the promise of America, the Constitution, the idea it was founded on, and free speech, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that everyone was created equal. Even as awkwardly and legally confusing as it started out to be, wavering through there, including, up to and including and through the Civil War and other areas, It is the promise of America and the principles on which the country was founded that make it great and important. And so from a progressive and liberal standpoint, this idea that somehow we will say that America isn't great, I find patently offensive, if you want to, and to some degree cruel to the idea that that the country stands for. Effectively, in saying that, you're saying that there is nothing special about being able to worship the religion of your choice, or being able to have freedom of speech, and all the the ironic things that far right argue about the value of well, that violates the Constitution when the other side does it, or that or that is a an attack on freedom because those people have a right to do something I don't want them to be able to do. That this absurdity, how people play with the principles themselves, does not undermine that part of it. There's a little blues for you for a second. And Mary, people in our chat room bring up things like slavery and those kind of things. Those are failings of the country. But ultimately, we fought a civil war over slavery. We were one of the first countries to get rid of it in the world. It still exists in countries in the world. And we got rid of it. As much as it is a mark on our collective history, it is also a value because we went through that. There are quite a few countries, quite frankly, that dropped slavery because they saw the damage the fight did to us. I think that what makes America great is the principles on which we stand, and the carrier, the fact that the constitutional protections that are given to us that were unique in the world when when they came into being, and have spread, and in some ways. There are other countries that do certain parts of it better than us, and other countries where arguably they don't. I completely agree. Northern European, Canadian countries can be an improvement on how we do things, especially things like healthcare. But I also disagree with how England treats speech in some ways. In their desire to eradicate certain types of speech, they put curtails on it that I think are too easily abused. And I think the freedom of speech includes all the freedom to, to say stuff that I disagree with or I find awful, because that's an intrinsic part of it. And again, all these things that we kind of take for granted as a country are not even in and of themselves the values that you have to import directly, but they are the carriers by which those values exist. They are the delivery system. Freedom of speech in and of itself is not actually the value. Freedom of speech allows you to express. It's super important that we understand that before we start curtailing it. Now, that being said, do I think there should be no social ramifications for saying stuff? No. And do I think when Bill O'Reilly is complaining that his freedom of speech is being violated because people call him out as a bully or a dick, is freedom of speech is childish, silly. That's exactly how it works here. Both sides being important. The people decrying the marches as if, president's already been elected, you guys need to get used to it. This is your president now. As if both parts, the election process and the response to it, is not a valuable and important part of our democracy. So to me, and people can, you can put in the comments below whether you feel this way or not, but I have a pretty violent response emotionally to people who say the country isn't great or hasn't ever, and it's funny that Frederick Douglass would come up in this pathetic lashabout by the Trump administration, and Trump himself, to appear inclusive and wise when and caring and understanding, that ultimately Douglass is one of the great things about this country, the existence of Frederick Douglass. And you can argue that if he hadn't had to have lived the life he lived, and if he, and if that challenge hadn't existed, he would have been as valuable to the growth of human life as anybody who's in the world who's been representative of a challenge. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, to one of my heroes, Muhammad Ali. The challenges that they went through to some degree are what makes them. It doesn't excuse the damage they experienced, but it is part of the process. Them extraordinary and beautiful and important, and lessons for us all. And there's some idea, I guess, now that you get to skip history. That in the creation of a country or the creation of a way that you can just kind of tweet your way past the lessons and the difficulty of learning those lessons and the culture as easily as the stroke of a pen. And that doesn't happen for any group. And I think it's important that when we talk about the value of diversity in our country, when we talk about the value of method and experience and culture and religion, that we understand that what is great about America is the fact that that discussion, even when it's an argument, can happen here. And there's have to forgive everything that's been done in the name of America, lest you allow things that have been, crimes committed by people who've been in charge at different points. That by letting, those people define what America is, you tacitly throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the value of democratic society, and at some point are just clamoring for some form of secondary authoritarianism. You just want somebody to come in that's on your side to run things, and only for people who believe that, democracy is a lot more messy than that. It is a relationship. And relationships grow strained and difficult, often right before they are found to be the most valuable relationship in your life. And that is true of race relations. That is true of the difficulties going on with people in the LGBT community, and their detractors, and the people on the right who can't see past their own bigotry. The only way that they're going to is if this conversation continues back and forth, and we take it seriously. And again, decrying that somehow America never was great, or that slavery or Jim Crow make it so that the United States wasn't great, when the removal of those things are upon a good many Americans. And a good many Americans, as much as there's the irony that there's so much Southern pride about the failed pro-slavery, states in the South, that there's not been an equal amount of the ally pride of the northern families that fought just as vehemently and strongly, if not more so, to end slavery. It's important to recognize that our heritage is not wholly the sum of our flaws, any more than it is wholly the sum of our victories. This idea that America does no wrong is as flawed as this America has done no right. And ultimately, it is the the Constitution itself, the Bill of Rights, the laws we put in place in this country to protect people that other countries do not, that make us great. However slapdash and however weakly we deal with that responsibility, the fact that we have taken it on is what makes this country great. And I take great offense at people like Donald Trump saying that it was great once and it will be again. It never stops being great, even when it's going through the growing pains. And the very fact that people can march and show what they believe and hold up whatever signs they want and stand wherever they want and storm the Capitol and airports and make this it is an intrinsic part of what makes this country great all the time. And that's what must be protected. Once you write off that, you say America was never great, or it's always great, you cut off the very necessary elements of debate, conscience, legislation, and the intellectual and emotional connection that people need to have while they disagree. You can't make fun of Trump's wall by putting a wall between you and your enemies. The mocking of Trump's wall truly requires reaching out to you to some degree despise. Now, I will say this as one caveat. Whenever I engage or I am in a situation where I'm engaging people who I would consider to have vile views, that believe genuinely racist and bigoted and prejudiced things, that they seem who seem in control of those thoughts, who have thought them through and decided it is in their self-interest to maintain and carry those thoughts. And I know, speaking to this person, that even facts will not shift that for them. Then the value of my arguing with them gets even higher, because there are people to their left and to their right in their circle of friends, in their circle of influence, that may not buy it all the time. Every true in their audience, in their congregation, in their group, that when they hit one of these hardline points, has a flinch moment and goes, I think you're being too prideful about that thought, and I don't agree with you. I agree with you in general, but I can't just let it slide, all the time. Those people are reaching. Those people you can have a conversation with, and while they may never agree totally with you on things, as a progressive, as a liberal, I feel the responsibility to speak to them with a clarity and a dignity that is protections of the Constitution that were granted to me in the first place to be able to carry out the conversation. Now, am I completely comfortable on Twitter and other places mocking someone and having a back and forth, and going toe to toe with someone as far as verbally? Absolutely, and I have no issue with that. But at no point will I try to find a point of ingratiation, because I'm not sure. My goal is never to root out the enemy that I suspect is within, but to recognize the possible, and it is not easy. But the complication, the difficulty of it, is the glorious part of Old Glory. It is the values that are within the protective nature of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and the extraordinary nature of the Equal Protection Clause, and the extraordinary nature free speech and freedom of religion, that went into it was created, were extreme and continue to be so. And so it's our goal when we, whenever people have a question about how America is doing stuff, or whether it's, doing certain things that are below its mission statement, its core values, we seek to correct them, but never question the fact that our ability to question those things, our ability to correct those things within the context of a democratic society with free speech and the freedom to travel across state lines without having to show papers, to interact with people of like mind within, peacefully. That's the value of that never diminishes and is always. So there you go. I felt the need to say that because I kept seeing a bunch of this backlash. I will not let this slapdash garbage presidency and these bumper sticker mentalities on the part of Trump supporters and this weird protection racket of certain progressives and liberals diminish that fact. I will not let you take that from me. You do not get to take that from me. So, I like just a sounding off of values, so people know what I'm about and what to expect. And to me, the fact that you guys show up in the chat when I'm doing the show and engage, even when I say we go outside the, in our discourse, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I just wanted to say overall, just thank you guys for being there and engaging in this conversation, because it speaks volumes to some of those beliefs that you that the freedoms we oftentimes take for granted in a democratic society cannot be co-opted by people who are not good shepherds of them, and that in taking ownership of those beliefs, I am by no means diminishing past historical mistakes or damage done by people who have run this country at different points in history. And by doing that, I'm not letting them own what the charter, the notion, the ideas, the principles of America are. I will not. And as much as I have my issues with conservative thought, and we will hash them out again and again, and I will use very strong language from time to time based on my passion. I will never question their humanity. Libertarians are dicks. Never remove and don't believe that what they talk about is a political discussion at all. Not let them not be part of the conversation. That's it. And so I appreciate you guys. I really do. Take an extra minute. I don't know that I do it often enough. So anyways, that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me. And we'll see you next time. And I just want you to think about that over the course of the next, week or so, when all this, when this Trump nonsense rolls forward, that it will help you keep your wits during this part of it, because that's what we need. There was an article I saw and I don't want to get on a second tangent, but there was an article I saw about how we need to be afraid of Trump. You must be afraid of Trump. Fear Trump and what he's going to do. And what he meant was, don't get lulled into a false sense of security and forget about it. You got to stay vigilant. What he meant was vigilant. But what he used, the word he used was afraid, fear. And no one operates well from a thought of fear or worry. You do not have all of your skills as a human being when you are consumed with fear or worry. So, be concerned, be aware, be focused, but use every tool at your disposal. Don't let these people junk America because of a bone they have to pick or their own personal issues. They don't get to define the value of this country. This country is great because of what it stands for and where it's going, as ugly as that process can be at times. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next time. This is the House Sparks Radio program worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. This is an addendum, so technically speaking, but insofar as the podcast and other stuff, people might catch this later. But you guys are awesome. Thank you, chat. We'll see you later.